Hey everyone, welcome to Let's Write Books, a weekly live stream show where writers can come together for community advice and, most importantly, dedicated time for you to work on your book. It is brought to you by Butterdocs, which is the best writing software I think there is right now. But I'm a little biased because I work there. But it's the perfect app for writing your novel. It's what I'm using. And if you're interested, there's a link below. In the description to learn more. So yeah, today on Let's Write Books, we are focusing on landing the end of your novel. So the past couple of weeks, we've kind of done a little series where we've been doing free writes. 2 weeks ago, we did on finding the best beginning for your novel. And then last week we did conquering the middle. And now what comes next? The end. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. Of course, you can use the free writes however you want. Maybe you have some other thing you want to do and you just want some dedicated time and a community, and that's awesome. These are optional writing prompts that you can do if you want. Yeah. All right. So, but before we get into it, I want to know where are you? What kind of book are you writing? And where are you in the writing process? Because I know people are all over. Some are revising drafts. Some are kind of with me in the start, figuring things out. Yeah, and also love just hearing the different kinds of novels that are being written. So I'd love to hear in the chat what you're working on. I am in Los Angeles, and again, it's another beautiful day in paradise. And if you live in Los Angeles, you actually have to. It's like a legal requirement to keep up the fiction that the weather's always perfect here, because our economy depends on that. So if anyone is found violating that, there's like harsh repercussions. That's why we have the Rose Bowl parade, is that so everyone that's freezing on New Year's Day in the rest of the country like tunes in and sees like sunny Southern California, the Rose Bowl parade. Yeah, and there's like, oh, I want to move there. And that's basically what keeps California afloat. Anyway, so I'm in LA. I'm writing a novel that's it's interesting. It's sort of literary fiction with some thriller things. And I think it's kind of almost going to evolve a little bit over the course of the novel, where it's going to sort of start off a little more kind of literary fiction in the POVs of these characters, and then sort of towards the tail end kind of rev up to more of a thriller. But I'm kind of interested to see how it evolves as I'm writing it. Because again, I'm like super early in the process. I'm like doing these prompts with you guys to help me develop the novel and kind of go through the whole process. So I'm still figuring out my story, figuring out my characters, and kind of the whole shape of it as we move forward. All right, but today we're going to do 3 25-minute sprints. So those are kind of the Pomodoro method, 25-minute sprints. We're going to do 3 of those. And again, during those sprints, you can either do your own thing or you can join us for the topics, which I'm going to show you in just a moment. Checking in with the chat, Nisi and Teji, welcome back. The Dakota contingent, Barbara from LA. Thanks for being here to kickstart our writing week. Of course. Yeah, that's great. It's Monday. It's Monday morning. Well, at least it's Monday morning for me. For some of you, it's probably afternoon or potentially evening. But yeah, happy to do this here. Matt back from a family vacation. Forced myself to get back to revising my fantasy manuscript. Fantastic. Like, it's always funny because I feel like when you come back from vacation, you're supposed to be like energetic and ready to go, but like so oftentimes when you come back from vacation, you're just like, I don't know, vacation's really nice. Like I feel like that's what my life should be like. But anyways, I'm glad you're here, Matt, and hope you're able to get some revisions done. Craig from St. Louis, novels, military thriller, currently on second read through, just catching typos. Awesome. Should be getting beta read feedback soon to help me guide the revision process. Awesome. Oh, it's great. Great to hear that, Craig. I hope you get some great feedback. Elia from Italy, writing fantasy in the first half of the book and revision of a short story in the same setting. Oh, cool. A little interconnected universe there. Fantastic. Nisi, writing contemporary romance, maybe some thriller aspects intertwined, and back to developing. Fantastic. Great. Amy Lane in Nashville. I'm working on an Appalachian ghost story today. Oh, that sounds really cool. Best of luck on that. Here's a question. Can you import a screenplay into Butterdocs? How would that look, and where would one usually go from there to be a novel? So not really, because you can. So for people who are wondering about this, we have 2 writing apps, obviously Butterdocs, which is what we're using here for novel writing, but we also have a screenwriting app called Arc Studio. So a lot of our users do both. But because Butterdocs isn't a screenwriting app, it's not built for imports from screenwriting. So I would basically kind of start from putting the beats of your story into Butterdocs using the blocks features and kind of go from there, I think. All right. So what are the prompts that we're doing here today? Oh, I got some more people here. Teji writing a contemporary speculative novel with a cozy vibe. Oh, was it Hygge? Is that the like Scandinavian thing that has like the coziness? Forgive my pronunciation there. Neffy, though I already know the end, I have to add the parts leads to it. I'm about 3/4 of the story. It's interesting. I love, I mean, there's different styles of writers. I know there's a lot of writers who won't write anything until they know the end. That's kind of what they start with. And they aim towards that. I'm a little different. Like I oftentimes, I might have a sense of the ending, but like, I don't know exactly what it is. Like I feel like there are kind of writers who explore towards something and writers like dig down towards something. And I'm more of kind of like the explore type writer. I feel like that. Ooh, from Greece, welcome. Writing a fantasy YA set in the 1800s. Italy, fantastic. Got all the classics there. We got Latin and Greek covered here. Although, I mean, it's the 1800s, so that's not really Latin era anymore. Barbara, in the first stages of a magical realism fantasy novel that was going to be a feature and perhaps too complex for my first novel, but fun. I mean, hey, go for it. If you're going to like write a novel, why not go for it? And a pantser here. Yeah, that's kind of more. I mean, I'm a little bit. So that's pantser versus plotter, right? How much outlining you do depends. I'm a little balanced of much. I mean, I like have the shape, general outline, but like it's more even. I'm talking about even before getting to the outline stage. Like people just start with the ending. I don't know, but I like generally start with a question. I feel like more. I don't know. I love the different approaches. All right. So I want to get into the prompts that we're doing today. We're going to do 3 writing prompts, which again are optional. You are welcome to do them or do your own thing because everyone's on a different part in their writing, different part of the process. But if you want to add them to your Butterdocs account, there's a link in the description below. And again, if you click on that link, you'll get to a screen that says this, landing the ending prompts, copy to my templates. And then once you do that, it's in your Butterdocs account and you can use these prompts, this note template with the prompts in it over and over again for this story or for your other stories in Butterdocs. So it's really cool. You have that template to reuse. And then you can have it in your account. And these are what the prompts are here. I'm actually going to make these bigger so it's easier for you guys to see. But the prompts we're going to do are prompt 1. What is the novel's climax? What is the most intense or exciting thing that happens in your story? So that will do that first. Prompt 2. Where do you want your protagonist or protagonists to be at the end of the story? What have they won or lost? How have they changed? And what is a choice they must make to show how they've changed? Prompt 3, how does the ending reinforce what you want to say in your novel? And or how does it shift the perspective of everything that came before? So how is it the culmination or just kind of how is it providing a new lens to look at what happened before? And then bonus prompt, if you finish one of these other ones or want to do something different, how is your story delivered on the promise of your novel? Now, promise, remember we talked about that when we were talking about the beginnings, where in the beginnings you set up the promise of your novel, which is basically what the reader can expect if they keep reading. What kind of stuff are they going to get? Or like, what's the fun that they're going to get? And this is kind of a time to reflect back on your story and be like, okay, have you delivered on that? Have you given the reader what the promise was? And if not, then you have time to adjust. But if you want to add this again, you've added the writing template, which I showed. You just go into your notes and do new note from template and landing the ending prompts. And so it is just in there for you, ready to go. All right. So like I said, we're going to do that first prompt right now, which is what is the novel's climax? What is the most intense or exciting thing that happens in your story? This is kind of what you're building to. I don't have too much to say about this before we get into the writing prompt. I feel like most people know kind of what a climax is. But the idea is that in the middle of the story, things are escalating and they're coming to this point. And it can be very different depending on what kind of story you're writing. But like this in general, it's the biggest thing. It's the exciting thing. It's the thing that sort of the reader has been looking forward to. They want to know this and then kind of what happens after it. So I'm going to play some music. I'm going to put the timer on the screen and 25 minutes. We're going to free write on this. And then we're going to come back, chat a bit on the other side and move on to the other prompts, do some announcements. It's going to be fun. It's a nice Monday. It's going to be a casual writing day. It's awesome. You set this time aside for your writing. So, just like try to lock in. Let's do this thing. I think it's going to be a good time. I'm feeling it today. So here 5 minutes on the clock. Let's do some writing. All right, that was the end of our first writing sprint, which the prompt below, which I actually tweaked a little bit. Maybe you saw kind of partway through through the sprint because I was thinking about it. So I had that little bit at the end. So prompt 1, what is the novel's climax? What is the most intense or exciting thing that happens in your story? And how does your midpoint lead to that? So I added that last point about the midpoint during the sprint as I was thinking about it, because I think really, the midpoint often is that moment when everything changes, it sets up the back half, and what you have is the escalation from the midpoint up to this climax. So for me, that was very helpful in thinking about my midpoint and the consequences of that and how that leads and escalates to the climax of my story. Anyways, welcome to everyone who joined during that sprint. Ali from Colorado, so glad you're here. Let me know, how did it go? Are the muses with us today? Are they blessing your fingers with their presence? Did you have any revelations or insights into the climax of your story? I'd love to hear it in the chat. We were also earlier talking about figuring out endings in like kind of the different ways. And I'm kind of curious. I want to know, like, when do you figure out the ending in your story? Like, at what point in your process do you have a fair idea of what the end is going to be? Do you start with that? Do you find it in the outlining stage? Do you find it on the page? Do you start? Yeah, I'm just kind of curious. What are your guys' approaches to endings? Let me know in the chat. Yeah. Neffy was just feeling the flow there. Well, I think I was holding my breath the whole time while I wrote straight through on a prompt 2. Neurons firing faster than I could write. Still writing. Fantastic. Don't let me stop you. Although remember to breathe, because 25 minutes is a really long time to hold your breath. I don't think that's physically possible. So don't want you to like pass out on the keyboard. And then, although I'm picturing you passing on a keyboard and like, then it's just like you're on like the letter E and it just like keeps going for like, I don't know, 100 more pages. Anyways, that's just what's going on in my brain. Rosie, greetings. So glad you're here. Miss Storyable is at the midpoint. Her approach to the ending varies, depends on the story. I think that makes sense. Sometimes we like have a sense of it. Sometimes we have a question we know that's going to be answered. But yeah, I get that, where it's like, it's not always like, I don't think writers like, I think like we think about like that we have approaches or like formats or like ways we write, but like really when we look at like the actual writing, it often doesn't follow those things, just because it's such, I don't know, there's like a magic to it, right? Where you never know like which connection your brain is going to make in like in what order, and so how you're going to get there. Except for Ilya, who has a clear ending in mind when he starts. So, just it's different for everybody. One thing I wanted to say, I kind of forgot this at the beginning, but just like a quote for us to kind of like have as this session from Longfellow. Great is the art of beginning, but greater is the art of ending. So that's kind of what we're talking about today, the greater art of ending your novel. Although Longfellow was more of a poet, but still his poets were pretty like epic and like had stories on it. But that's what we're working on, the great art of ending today. Great. Mr. Roybal, are the Post-its behind you an outline? Oh, so these. Yeah, that's actually like different stuff. That's like a different story that I was working on. There's like a lot. There's like more over here too. I also have like whiteboards over that are over there. So I like to mix it up. Sometimes I use the outlining features like in Butterdocs, the beats and the blocks in Butterdocs and Arc Studio. Sometimes I'll write by hand, like I was doing some free writing over the weekend here, and I'll do beats there. Sometimes I'll put physical cards up, although they're actually index cards. They're not post-it notes. They're like these kind of things. And I like to use that. Sometimes I'll write out on a whiteboard. I feel like tactily, I like having different sort of ways of interacting with the information and seeing it. Pamela was feeling that prompt. Nephew, the ending starts in your head very quickly. Oh, that's cool. Amy Lane, I think I'll find the ending when I get there. This might be a terrible strategy, but that's where I am. Sometimes it's the only way to go. I mean, it does mean that you have to do a lot of rewriting sometimes, because you're like figuring out the ending and you're like, oh, right, that's the ending, but that's not necessarily what I wrote to get there all the ways. And you have to go back. But like rewriting is writing, as they say. I usually start just writing knowing what the beginning is, but I figure out the ending about halfway through. Awesome. Barbara saying, I usually have a non-fleshed idea for the first act. Once that's in my brain, potential endings often show up before I have a story. These bookends help me figure out the second act. Oh, that's great. Cool. Pamela, I usually have my ending before I write the whole story. Now I'm mostly focusing on screenplay. For TV episodic, I think it's different. Yeah, TV is a little different animal, because with TV, you're kind of setting up a question mark. Because like the thing about TV is it keeps going, right? So you're not telling a closed ended story, especially with like a pilot. Oftentimes you may have some sort of sense of how the first season ends or how this whole series ends, but like you have to kind of like leave these questions open because you're writing more episodes, over and over. But yeah, we're all over the place here with our endings, which is great. You have like a group of writers that's like a guaranteed way to like not get a like a consensus idea on any aspect of the writing process, which I kind of love. I just want to quickly also say, next week we're kind of like switching it up a little bit. We've been talking about beginning, middle, and ends, but next week we're kind of be doing a little focus on the kind of the style. So there's the idea of like style over substance, that phrase. Next week we're going to be talking about the style of your novel is substance. So we're going to be kind of talking about like POV, tone, and some of the more ways of like actually using the words on the page and how we approach them, and how that style can kind of affect the story itself. So if you want to RSVP for this, there should be a link, I believe, in the description below. But yeah, it'll be the same time here, Monday morning, next Monday at 10 a.m. We're going to be talking about that. The style is substance. Great. Okay, cool. Also, remember to like and subscribe if you're liking this. And I think we're going to hop into the second writing prompt right now. So that is kind of more character-based. Where do you want your protagonist to be at the end of the story? What have they won or lost? How have they changed? And what is a choice they must make to show how they've changed? I think this last one's really interesting because so much of what stays with the reader, how our stories are defined are by the actions of the characters. And so kind of the best way, I think, to show how someone's changed is to reflect that through an action. I mean, you can have them have a speech or they can think about something, but really it's like our, actions define characters. So what is something they can actually do to show how they have changed over the course of the story? So again, yeah, we're going to be talking about in this prompt, where do you want your protagonist to be? What have they won or lost? How have they changed? What has the journey been for them? And what is a choice they must make to show, to kind of crystallize these changes? So I am going to play some music, put the 25-minute timer back up, and then we're going to touch base, chat one more time, and then hop finally after that into our third writing prompt for today. So let's just take a moment to stretch out just a little bit. If you're feeling a little tight or cramped up in your chair, or maybe you're at a standing desk or one of those treadmill desks and you've walked several miles already during this during Let's Write Books. But yeah, let's do it. Prompt 2, I'm going to play the music, and I'll catch you guys on the other side. All right, that was the end of our second writing sprint. Second of 3, 2 down, 1 more to go, 2/3 of the way to the end. There are probably other ways I could say that, but yeah, that's it. That was our second writing sprint of 3. Welcome to Let's Write Books. If you joined during that sprint, this is a show dedicated to helping you write your novel, giving you a dedicated time and space and encouragement community to write your novel, and free write prompts to help you through the process as well. This is our second prompt. Where do you want your protagonist to be at the end of the story? What if they want are lost? How have they changed? And what is the choice they must make to show how they change? How'd that writing sprint go for you guys? Did the muses show up? Did they abandon you? Did you have any sort of sense of this choice that the protagonist would have to make? I got like 3 protagonists in my story, and I think I got a better sense, at least for one of them in this sprint, about like what kind of choice I need them to make at the end of the story in order to show this change. But yeah, or if you weren't doing those prompts, how's the writing going for you? Are you unlocking things in your story? Is there energy starting to fade? Let me know. Get in the chat. I also got a little sidetracked because I have these 3 POV characters. And I've started wondering, like, wait, are these the right ones? Or all 3 of them the right ones? And I sort of like wondering maybe whether one of them should change, which is interesting because, you know, obviously I haven't written anything. I'm in like the developing stage, so I can sort of do these things, these sort of changes without like having to throw out like hundreds of pages or anything like that. But we're going to kind of talk about that more next week. A little bit, we're going to talk about like POV, you know, like obviously like POV characters, but like first person, third person, or second person if you're feeling crazy. So yeah, I don't know. I think we're going to talk more about that next week. Anyways, I want to hear how it's going for you. Another announcement. If you write other things besides novels, we're doing Let's Write scripts on Wednesday afternoon, which is our screenwriting show. And you're welcome to join to work on your novel there too. If you just want like another time to write, you can RSVP for that at arcstudiopro.com/events, or there's a link in the description. And also for Arc Studio, we're doing a special event, which I'm excited about, on Thursday evening. If any of you happen to be interested, doing a Q&A with Jill Chamberlain, the author of The Nutshell Technique, Crack the Secret of Successful Screenwriting. But we're talking about like story structure. It's going to be mostly screenplay, but I think it's, I don't know, hearing smart people talk about story structure in general could be cool. So you can also RSVP for that at arcstudiopro.com/events, which is, there's a link to in the chat. So that's going to be Thursday evening. Just wanted to let you know in case you're interested, even though this is novel writing, maybe you want to show up for that. as well here. For Elia, great second sprint. Clearer mind now for me. Yeah, sometimes you need that first sprint for a warm up, and then you get into the second sprint and it goes. Rosie, this prompt has made me question whether I've got the right protagonist. It's fascinating because that's kind of like a little bit what happened with me during this prompt. I had a similar thing where I have these three, it's a three protagonists and these best friends. And I've been sort of struggling with the idea that they're all kind of, they're very different people, but they're all kind of going through the same thing together, and like having all three rotating perspectives of sort of the same events might be too much. But having two of them, and then one of them is going to be there with his daughter, who's like who's like 18-year-old, and I'm like, oh wow. So what if it's not him? What if it's the first two guys and then the third one's daughter, who's the POV character, and provides like a different perspective kind of on all these events? Like that could be interesting and unlock something differently. So I don't know. That's sort of like the scary part of free writing is all of a sudden you start questioning things, but then there's also like, wow, that actually could lead to something really, really great. Yeah, it's a good thing, but I'll say the but is that there's more work. But for Pamela, very helpful prompt. Amy Lane, I'm not sure where it's going, but it could get weird. What am I doing? If it could get weird, that sounds good. Chase that. I think that's fantastic. Nephew saying she has two protagonists jockeying for first place. That's great. I love that because it's like, they're also each other's antagonists, right? That's how they view each other. And they always say that the best protagonists view themselves, right, as the heroes of the story. Craig saying, my protagonist is my protagonist because he's the one that undergoes a major change. He's most affected by the events, but I definitely like a few of my secondary characters. They're funnier. I think we were chatting about a little bit this last week, that the idea that sometimes we have boring, or not boring, but like less interesting main characters because they have to like carry the weight of the story. And we fall in love with our secondary characters who are like a little more free to like be fun. And I don't think that's necessarily always wrong, but I think it is good to find ways for the protagonist to have some of that energy, right? Where they should be real fleshed out people and have POV, like that can be funny as well. Yeah. Ooh, Miss Troyball's main character just turned pro. Well, actually, if the game is afoot, fantastic. Nisi, I was able to give responses, but I realized that sometimes it's challenging to get the ideas in my mind explained on paper. Like I know the answers, can see it, but putting it into words is hard. I think you just summed up the whole challenge of writing, right? Like that's what it is, incredibly hard. And it's amazing sometimes when you can feel that, like you're writing and you're like, I know I can do this. I have a thing, but I just like my brain's not doing it. And there's like two sort of there's like strategy for that. Like the first time, sometimes you need a break, and that's fine. And you have to be honest with yourselves if you do. But like that's what free writing I think is great, or taking a shower or a walk, or like turning your brain somewhere else and letting it sort of like autopilot for a bit, and like letting your in the background, letting your gears whirl and figure that out. That can be helpful. So sometimes you take a break, but also like at the end of the day, it is hard. And sometimes you just have to figure it out and keep going and keep trying until eventually you end up at the right thing. We were talking about boring characters, right? Like Harry Potter is way more boring than Ron and Hermione. Yeah. Like the main character doesn't always have to be the most interesting one. They just the one that is carrying the story. Barbara, the more I free write, the more interesting the story gets, pushing the envelope big time. Oh, that's awesome. I love to hear that. That's great here. Fantastic. All right, y'all. Well, that's great. That's great. I love it. We're going to do one last sprint here. And then that's going to be it for today. But again, you can join on Wednesday for Let's Write Scripts if you write screenplays, or if you just want to work on your novel. Again, we talk mostly about screenplays at that event, but like you can write whatever you want during the sprints. And we have that special event on Thursday night, which you are all invited to, and you can invite anyone to that. It'll be on YouTube in the Arc Studio channel, so it'll be great. Okay, now let's keep going with the third sprint. If we can dig deep and find our energy. How does the ending reinforce what you want to say in your novel, and or how does it shift the perspective of everything that came before? So I think for the first part of this prompt, we're talking about the idea of what is it that you want to say? Like, what is the point of this novel? Sure, it can just be fun. It can just be a story, but like oftentimes we're guided by there's some idea we want to express. It could be theme is one way to look at that. It could be some aspect of the human condition, something about the world that we're trying to say. And oftentimes I really find that like what a story says depends on the ending, because you can have very similar setups that have very different conclusions depending on the conclusion. Like what you're trying to say is very different depending on how the story ends. If there's a person whose like family is killed and they're going for revenge, the story where they turn just dark and kill everyone, that says something very different about that's a very different kind of story than this person, than them able to like find grace and forgiveness and redemption or something, so but they can both be the same story 2/3 of the way and then be very different at the end. So how does the ending reinforce what it is that you want to say in your novel? Or how does it shift the perspective? I think this is kind of an interesting little twist on it. Or maybe we've seen this story, but the ending kind of gives us a different shade, gives us a little angle on what happened before. So we are going to jump in this, and I'm going to play some music, put the timer back up. I think we're going to do a shorter one here. Yeah, we'll do like a 20-minute sprint for this one, because we're at the end a little bit. Yeah. And if you have to leave, no worries. Say farewell in the chat. I love to hear farewell, hear how the writing went for you. If you stick around to the very end, we'll chat. We'll say farewell, our final farewells. But yeah, until then, let's do it. Let's dig deep and finish strong. Here we go. All right, and that brought us to the end, or brings us to the end of Let's Write Books for Monday, February 24th. We did 3 prompts today, or 3 sprints, focused on landing the end of your novel. Yeah, I hope it was good. I hope the writing time was good. If you were doing the prompts or not, if you're doing your own thing, that you, I don't know, felt creative, that you felt like you had a space to write and a time to write, and were able to like just kind of block everything else and get it down. That's really what it is for. Thank you so much for showing up, for being active in the chat. Yeah, this was great. I hope to see some of you later this week at Let's Write Scripts on Wednesday, and that Q&A with Jill Chamberlain, the author of The Nutshell Technique, on Thursday night. There's links to RSVP for that in the chat below. But yeah, if not then I hope to see you next week. I hope you have great weeks. Hope you take care of yourselves, and I hope you find some other time to write just in your normal routine. So thanks so much. Great to see you all, everybody. Have a fantastic week. All right, that is it for me. I'm signing off, guys. Peace.